as a bodybuilding coach for many years for other competitors, I've seen firsthand the psychological impact that entire process has on people, because you're working so hard towards something and then you achieve it. But then there's also that anticlimactic moment where it's all over.
I think I'd be crazy if I wasn't concerned that my husband was eating steak every meal. I did a lot of the typical wife making fun of. We went away with friends to Panama. We're making fun of Mike.
Our preference is to work with people who want to learn and who are at the point where I'm willing to try different things to get a different result, because what I've been doing has not been working.
It's coaching everyday people, everyday parents.
I know for me, my skin is the best that it has ever been.
Yeah.
And she's the one who tells me that. So
his back feels so good. I'm like, wow, it's so smooth.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday morning. We've got Corrie-Beth and Mike with us today. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm great.
Awesome. Welcome. Where are you guys located?
We're
in New York. Are you in the New York City or New York, upstate New York, or whereabouts?
That's always a point of contention. Everybody else says that we're upstate, but we're actually just above Westchester County. So we're only about 45 minutes from the city.
Got it. Okay. It's a pleasure to have you guys on here. For those that are unfamiliar with what you guys do or stuff, can you just maybe give us a little, I guess give us a little background on both of you guys. It's good to have both folks in here. It's fun to have a tag team.
So we run Pure Physique. It's personal training studios in the tri-state area of New York and Connecticut. It's also an online program and a fitness franchise. And what we do in that is we've been running that together for about 13 years. Former bodybuilders, both of us, Mike professional, and we are parents of two phenomenal young boys. And so we have a whole family that we try to keep healthy and well while serving our clients.
Well, very good. And so I guess, how long ago were you guys into bodybuilding, or when has it been since you competed?
The last time that we competed was back in 2009, I'm going to say. 2012. I had 13 years in total experience as a natural bodybuilder. I brought Corrie-Beth on board with me, and she had done it for about 4 years. And basically, during that time, we had one of those very typical bodybuilder lifestyles where it was packing the Tupperwares, tracking and measuring absolutely everything that we put in our mouths. It was a very daunting process, but at the same respect, the end product was always great. We enjoyed the shape that we got into and the fact that we got to compete on a very high level. But I think that what changed for us was when we finally decided that we were no longer going to do any type of competition, we recognized that it was really difficult to maintain that shape without going to the extremes. And for us, that really was not an option anymore, because with a family and with a growing business, we knew where we had to put our time and attention, and having to live a life where we were slaves to our meal plan really wasn't working. And here we are, two fitness professionals that are supposed to be the example. And while no one would have ever said that we were out of shape by any stretch of the imagination, it was, for us personally, we didn't necessarily like where we were at. And so that really just set us on a journey of trying to figure out, how could we look like we are in that condition all the time, but without trying? And it was a long, winding road that eventually led to Carnivore.
Yeah, well, interesting. That's, that's a daunting task to look like you're in really good shape without trying. That's, what, first of all, props to you for doing it naturally. I certainly, I've always been anti-drugs in sport, and I've never done that stuff myself. I've always been sort of proud of the fact that I've never used that stuff. So good for you for that. So I guess, for the people who aren't familiar, when you said you were in the bodybuilding lifestyle and packing food and Tupperware and eating every 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever it might have been, what were you eating at the time? And were there any downsides to it, like physically? You get lean and look good, but any physical downsides to that for either of you? I know a lot of women say that tanks their hormones and things like that, particularly when they get really lean. But what exactly were you doing, and what were the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, what we were doing is really measuring macros and calories. When I told Mike I wanted to join him on board, he handed me the list of what it was going to look like in terms of, here's our proteins, our carbs, our fats, here's the calories. And I would just divide it by 6. And every 2.5 hours, it was a meal. And I was a teacher at the time. Mike was running our fitness studios at the time. And so we were packing big coolers, all the food, lots of meal prep. All day Sunday was cooking and prepping. And to be honest with you, Shawn, it was not the most fun thing to do together, but we made the best of it. And the downsides for me personally is I lost my menstrual cycle in that process. Definitely got extremely lean. But I think the biggest thing, and Mike can definitely speak to it, is wasn't really happy. Looked great, but didn't feel good. The mental piece didn't match the physical piece.
Yeah, I guess the thing that was most obvious is I was always walking around hangry. I was constantly battling hunger. And if that 2.5 hour window was closing in and I had not consumed something, my energy levels dipped tremendously. I could say that for certain we experienced a lot of brain fog and physical exhaustion all the time, which was difficult, especially with Corrie-Beth teaching and then me, in essence, teaching all day long, working one-on-one with clients or in group settings. So I think the biggest thing was it was just a drain on our energy overall.
It was amazing our relationship survived,
Yeah.
but it was very carb heavy. We were like super, super carb heavy, super low fat through that season.
Yeah. And I know for a fact that during that period of time, although I did not have any blood tests to prove it, my testosterone levels were most certainly dropping. I just think that every indicator was there in terms of what would be the physical repercussions of that happening. I was experiencing those for sure.
Yeah, and you said it quite carb heavy, and typically we hear chicken, broccoli, and rice is a staple, or canned tuna or something like that. But what were your protein sources? What were you eating for carbs, and were you getting any fat, or where were you getting your fat from?
It was a lot of chicken breast.
A lot of chicken breasts, a lot of egg whites. Carbs were coming from the oatmeal and the rice cakes. The fat was coming in the form of peanut butter, and we would maybe have a protein powder to make sure that we supplement. But it was, by all intents and purposes, a very low fat approach to nutrition. I would say that for myself, I was eating typically less than 50 grams of fat per day.
I was less than 20. It was really low.
And it was painful. Now today I eat 3 times that amount in any given day. But there was that fear of, I can't consume this fat because it's going to show up on my body. And along with everything else that we've been taught, we again are two, like many probably, that have grown up through that low fat phase. And there was always the fear and trepidation. I mean, I had a father who suffered from triple bypass surgery when he was 41 years old. So there was always the family also in the background saying, hey, be careful with what you do, make sure you do it right. And so I thought we were doing it right with regards to the way we were approaching our nutrition for competition prep.
Yeah. In a way, I'm sure if you had your blood tested, your cholesterol levels would be low, probably. I don't know for sure, but they could be. What, as far as, how old are you guys, if you don't mind? Would you mind sharing your age, or is that?
Right now, I am 46 years old.
37.
37 and 46. Okay. You guys look great, by the way. As far as you decided, so you did 13 years, I think you said 13 years or something like that, Mike, and then you did a season of competition. Is that right, Corey or Corrie-Beth?
It was 3 seasons of competition, and each one got better, but none were amazing.
Yeah. Okay. And as far as when you decided, hey, I'm done competing, what was that hard to do? Because a lot of people are like, that's their kind of their identity a little bit, and you feel like maybe I don't have an outlet now. But was that difficult for you to stop competing, particularly Mike, since you did it for long? Was that hard?
Yeah, it was an interesting period of time because the way that I usually describe it is I fell into somewhat of a depression. I'm not a depressed individual. I'm very optimistic, but it was more that voice in the back of my head saying, you're never going to be able to get into that shape again or look that way unless you're willing to go the distance, unless you're willing to do the things that you did to get there in the first place. And that was really challenging for me because I enjoyed the shape that I was in during those periods of time. And to have that thought in the back of my head that I'm never going to be there ever again, it was challenging. I wouldn't stake my whole identity on that, but you're definitely right that there is a major psychological component. And as also a bodybuilding coach for many years for other competitors, I've seen firsthand the psychological impact that entire process has on people, because you're working so hard towards something and then you achieve it. But then there's also that anticlimactic moment where it's all over and there's nothing to chase anymore. And it's pretty much all downhill from there. So it can play havoc on your mind for sure. And so I think that's why for me, it was really, what is the next step? What is going to be the next thing to conquer? And aside from business, on a personal front, it was, I got to figure out a way to, though, get back into that shape, but without doing all the things that we were doing previously.
Well, let me just, all the things you were doing previously, maybe you can describe that in more detail. How much working out were you doing? How many times a day? How many meals? Just kind of, what is the life of a bodybuilder, particularly? Obviously, there's off season, on season, but an overall picture, particularly, I guess, as you're getting ready for a contest, what does that look like?
My outlook is going to be very different than maybe what you've heard before in the past, because from a workout perspective, I, at this point, had already been deep into the way that we do training, which is very high intensity, short duration, infrequent workouts. So what that looks like on paper is, for the last 25 years, I've not trained more than 3 times a week for 30 minutes. Okay. And during that competition prep, it was the same thing. I was very anti-cardio. So we did no cardio during this prep. It was fat loss strictly through nutrition and resistance training. But as I said, the resistance training, never told they should say more than 2 hours in an entire week. And since that was like the basis of our business, I was also out to prove that you didn't have to train for 8 or 9 or 10 hours a week in order to be successful as a competitor. So the training side never changed at all for us. That was always a constant. But what did change was the nutrition. And it was waking up at 6 a.m., making sure that I had that first meal of oatmeal with protein powder and peanut butter mixed in. And then a few hours later, it would typically be a protein shake along maybe with some rice cakes and a light spread of peanut butter on those. Lunchtime, your typical chicken and rice and vegetables. Yeah, you totally nailed it. A few hours after that, maybe another protein shake or a protein bar to hold me over until dinner time. And then that was just any type of protein, typically with, again, more refined carbohydrates or some type of starchy carbs, be it rice or potatoes or something of that nature.
So the training was this sort of Mike Mentzer, Dorian Yates, Arthur Jones type of style that some people have really been successful with. And there's obviously a lot of people that, some people are more volume based. I think majority of bodybuilders tend to be more volume based, if I'm not mistaken. So how long, what contest prep for you? Was it 3, 4, 5 months? How long did it take you to get from where you were to whatever you jumped on stage at 4% body fat or whatever you ended up at?
Normally we would take anywhere from 6 to as many as 11 months to prep for a show. And it was only because we understood that in order to do it right, you need to go slow. Yeah. And that's always one of the challenges when anybody starts to think about getting into competition prep or just even losing fat in general. Everybody wants to do everything fast. And the biggest concern for us is we're not big people. We're not naturally heavily muscled individuals. So to lose at a rate of maybe a half to at most 1 pound of body fat a week was the rate at which we were trying to go. And in fact, most of the time I was going at a rate of about 1/4 pound per week. And so we would stretch the time as much as possible, as much as we thought we could handle mentally, so that when we showed up on stage, we were carrying as much muscle as we could. We conserved it through the training and proper rest and not having to go too overboard with the nutrition. In retrospect, it was overboard, but at the time, it was still the smartest approach that we could take with regards to going slow and allowing that fat loss to just happen gradually over time.
Yeah, there's only a small percentage of the people on the planet that get in the type of shape that a high-level bodybuilder will get into. And it's very instructive. I think it teaches you a lot about yourself. And then I think most people that, I may be wrong on this, but I think most people that do it at least figure it, they know how to get there, and then they usually stay in reasonable shape. There's some that probably just say, I'm so tired of this, and just blow up and you become massively obese. Some of the off-season bodybuilders eat quite a bit. And so you said, I want to get into somewhat of a comparable shape or lean year round type of thing without struggling. So how are you doing it now? What's going on with this today?
I think for us, what it is, it looks like a carnivore diet. That's essentially what we follow. Our process to get there, like many people, it started with keto, and then we started using some intermittent fasting and figuring out how we can utilize those two things together, which I think really started us in the right direction. But over time, like a lot of people, we struggled with keto, or we weren't doing it completely the way that it should have been done. And so it was probably just over a year ago that I was experiencing a whole lot of stomach pain after our lunchtime meals. And what we would typically do is we would order these salads from this really great place. And it would be grilled chicken, spinach, and usually berries in it. And afterwards, I would just find myself with having this tremendous stomach pain. And after a while, it got worse and worse, to the extent in which I would have to lay down on the couch and either take a nap, or I would be out for the next 12 to 18 hours because the stomach pain was just so much. At that time, I had decided to go and see an acupuncturist who started asking me questions about my nutrition, and I started explaining it. And she right away said, you are probably fructose intolerant. You just don't seem to be handling raw foods very well. And so at that point, since I was already well aware of carnivore, but was never quite confident enough to really dip my foot entirely in, I said, you know what, this might be the right time to give this a try. And so I almost immediately overnight gave up the vegetables, gave up the fruit, started eating nothing but fatty meat. And lo and behold, the stomach pain went away. And then slowly but surely, I was able to drag Corrie-Beth over onto my side. And her journey with it has been quite amazing as well.
Yeah, Corey, if you go back to the time when he said, hey, I'm going to go eat a bunch of meat and be like a crazy person, were you skeptical or concerned, or what was your opinion on that?
Shawn, I think I'd be crazy if I wasn't concerned that my husband was eating steak every meal. I did a lot of the typical wife making fun of. We went away with friends to Panama. We're making fun of Mike. And then for me, we went to a wedding on New Year's Eve for family just this last year. And it was the very next week, or within that week, we had an interview on our podcast with Dr. Anthony Chafee. And when he started really explaining the science, I'm a logic girl, Shawn. I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense why I had struggled with 30 pounds, being overweight, irritable bowel syndrome, lots of different digestive issues, and got myself to a point, but I was still bloated. And so January 1st, I said, I'll give it 30 days. And we are now 9 months later. And it's really jarred everything I thought I knew about health and fitness and nutrition, everything in my certifications. It's the opposite of everything they tell you, but it is the best I've ever felt as a busy mom.
Yeah, I hear that. This is the best I've ever felt by quite a few people. And yet there's people that convince you that you're actually sick. That makes me laugh when I hear that. So Mike, when you decided to do it and you noticed, hey, I'm not having this gut issue, how long Corrie-Beth, did you notice an improvement in him? Is that what allowed you to do it yourself, or was it just, I guess you said you talked to Chafee or something like that, or heard an interview or something like that, but what convinced you to try it? Was it his apparent result or success that convinced you ultimately?
I think the biggest thing was his energy was still stable. He still had sex drive. He was still able to do all the sessions at the gym and be the active dad that he is. And I'm like, okay, he doesn't have scurvy. He's not dying. He looks pretty healthy. Maybe there's something to it, but it was the combination, I think, of that and the perfectly timed presentation of facts and history of food, especially here in America, that really turned me on to what's 30 days going to do? Why don't I just give it a shot and join my amazing husband on this?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys, there's a guy named Robert Sykes. He goes by the so-called the keto savage. I know Robert's a good guy, and he's been ketogenic and more carnivore, plus his little keto brick bars that he sells. When you say fatty meat And to attain a certain level of leanness, you start getting sub 10, sub 8, sub 6% body fat. Can you do that on a high fat, a legitimately high fat diet? Or I guess you haven't competed since then, but I don't know whether you're walking around. I can't tell because you got a shirt on, but you're walking around at 10% body fat and like pretty effortlessly eating high fat, or what are you doing right now?
Oh, that's exactly it. And I guess I should back up for a moment. Since I've gone carnivore, and even starting just before that with using intermittent fasting, which I think for us was the first breakthrough, was that, oh my gosh, we don't have to eat every few hours. And we got over the hunger, we got over the cravings, all of the ups and downs in our energy level. And that's really what started on the path to, hold on a second, I can just focus on eating in this window of time. And by doing so, I'm getting leaner and staying leaner without, quote unquote, trying. And carnivore just took it to the next step where it was, wow, I'm really able to keep myself lean and stay probably, and again, this is without trying. So this is an important point. Without trying, I'm always within about 3 or 4 pounds of what my competition shape was. So I'm not putting forth a tremendous amount of effort. And listen, no perfect human being. We got little kids. If every so often I have a bite of something or indulge in something, it's usually for a moment. It's not going to turn into a thing. But my ability to rebound from that is so unbelievable. And whereas in the past, I know that would have led me down a road that would have probably resulted in binging and going back to some of these foods and putting body fat back on, that no longer happens. So it's just been the ease in which I get up. I typically will not eat until between 12 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon most days. When we do, we are breaking that fast, if not with a multitude of eggs and ground beef. We'll grill up a steak in the middle of the day. We'll have steak at dinner time, usually a ribeye, a Delmonico, some type of fattier steak. We'll also go with salmon, but we keep it pretty basic, and keeping it basic has kept it simple. And by keeping it simple, I think it's been able to allow both of us to just maintain our shape year round, again, without a whole tremendous amount of effort.
Yeah, that certainly is nice. And you said are you still doing coaching in the realm of bodybuilding? Is that still something you guys are doing?
Not so much in the realm of bodybuilding. Again, we fell upon what our target market is, and it's not the bodybuilders. And to be quite honest, unlike Robert, I have no desire to try to break down the walls and break down the thinking of people who really are just caught up in an old way of thinking and the old approach. Yeah. Our preference is to work with people who want to learn and who are at the point where I'm willing to try different things to get a different result, because what I've been doing has not been working.
It's coaching everyday people, everyday parents.
Yeah, but within your own self, if you said, hey, I want to jump back on stage, I'm going to use carnivore to do it, do you think you could do it?
At a challenge?
No, I'm just curious, how would you methodically doing it, knowing what you know about yourself with a carnivore diet, knowing what you know yourself about ketogenic diets, and also the years of bodybuilding experience? Could you do it? Could you design a program for yourself where you could get to whatever contest shape? You said you're only a couple pounds away, so it doesn't sound like it'd be too much of a stretch.
I'd say yes.
Yeah, I don't think it would be too much of a challenge to do it. The only thing that we would have to do differently, which would be the only reason why I don't want to do it, is going back to tracking. And you use the word methodical. It's exactly that. It's just being more methodical and being more exact about
how much protein, how much fat. Yeah.
And consistently hitting that each and every day, because that really is the big difference maker. Right now, again, we don't try and we're still so close. But I think just putting forth that little bit of extra effort to track those things, and then to take time to manipulate some of the variables, be it water or sodium, those really become like a lot of the smaller details that make the big difference when you are getting down to those last few percentage points.
Yeah, fair enough. And just back in the day when you were, because you said you weren't a super heavyweight bodybuilder. I don't know what weight class you competed in, but how much weight did you have to usually cut from like off season, fattest you were, down to, because some guys will drop 40 friggin' 50 pounds sometimes in the heavyweight classes, but how much were you typically shifting?
I'm going to say in the beginning, it was right around 15 pounds. And then I quickly got smart and realized that it wasn't worth putting too much weight back on in the off season. So I think after the first 1 or 2 seasons, maybe 10 pounds. And then after that, I'm going to say the last probably 4 years where I was really hitting like the height of my success, I was putting on no more than maybe 6 to 8 pounds in the off season. I was staying relatively lean just so that I didn't have to push so hard or risk losing muscle mass in the process.
I assume you guys are still training. Is that fair to say? You're still taking care of yourselves and training? And
Actively.
how does training basically without carbs, because you said you're on a high carb diet, compared to training with carbs? I mean, is there a big difference for you guys, or better, worse?
I would say for me, maybe it's better. I'm not sure if it's just over the last 13 years I've gotten better at training. It's still the same for me. It's twice a week, 30 minutes a pop. And I'm doing personal bests in a lot of different things now. And again, you could attribute that to time, being a mom, carrying pregnancies, just generally being stronger in age. But I don't notice anything that I'm lacking in my training today being carnivore.
Yeah, I'll say that the difference for me is there probably was initially a little bit of a drop off when I was making that transition, not with carnivore per se, but making that transition to keto and doing the intermittent fasting, where energetically, because I had been so reliant on carbs, there maybe was a slight fall off, but that didn't last very long. Once my body became fat adapted, and since then, my energy levels during my workouts are as high as they've ever been. My workouts have not suffered at all, especially since going carnivore. We're pretty diligent with it. And I'm still hitting a lot of the same numbers at this point. I have no expectations of hitting a lot of brand new personal bests. I'm happy maintaining my muscle mass and continuing to maintain my strength levels. And so I've been capable of doing that. So it's definitely has not been a downside to going carnivore at all.
What, as far as, I guess I should ask, what do you guys eat? You mentioned ground beef and eggs twice a day, 3 times a day, 5 times a day, once a day. What's the pattern look like for you guys?
We're about 2 times a day, maybe something in between. But for the most part, I would say the first meal is either ground beef or eggs. And the second meal is typically steak, occasionally salmon. And then I watched this girl on TikTok that was eating butter. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. You can have a little scoop of butter and you actually feel pretty satiated. Whereas in the past, that would have been chocolate and nuts. It's interesting. I think you're the same, right?
Yeah, relatively the same as Corrie-Beth. I'll mix in some beef sticks in the middle of the day, oftentimes. I'm still very conscious. I still have that bodybuilding mentality where I want to hit targets, but the only target I'm really concerned with is hitting my protein target each day.
He's not eating butter with me.
So no, I'm not as concerned about filling up with butter, but I am very conscious of making sure that, again, if I'm going to eat twice a day, that I'm eating enough within those 2 meals to meet my protein requirements. And if I feel like it's a day where I'm not as hungry, then I'll be very intentional about having beef sticks, or even occasionally going with some pork rinds, like just something where I could at least supplement my protein intake and just make sure that I hit that target each day.
And you mentioned a target. What is that target for you? Is it grams per pound, or what are you trying to hit?
So typically I'm going for in the realm of between 120 and 140 grams of protein per day. Usually it's anywhere from 20 ounces to 24 ounces worth of protein per day that I'm shooting for. But generally it's a focus on eating at least close to a gram per pound of lean body mass. So again, on my small frame, I'm not carrying tons of muscle. So if I get as little as 120 grams per day, then I'm probably right around where I need be. But I also like a little bit of an insurance policy. So I'm not afraid to push a little bit higher than that and go for 140, 150 grams if need be.
And what's your body weight right now? You're about 150-ish or so? Where are you at?
Even less than that. I think right now I've been walking around closer to 145.
Okay. And then Corrie-Beth, are you similar, like somewhere in the same target, basically?
Yeah, similar. My focus is just I eat till I'm full. If there's a piece of steak left, I'll pass it off. He'll gladly take it. But I eat till I'm full. And for me, it's been a range of 3 pounds, and 3 pounds from our wedding weight, actually, what we got married before kids. So I'm thrilled.
And what about how many kids do you have?
I have 2 boys.
2 boys. And how old are they, if you don't mind?
9 and 6.
Are they putting down some meat with you guys too?
They love steak. The 6-year-old asks for steak. And in fact, we just bought a cow locally. And the minute they tasted that ground beef, they announced that they were never going to eat store meat again. So they're pretty hooked. And occasionally we'll do some rice or something else for them. So when they feel like they want something else, it's definitely there for them, but they have no problem joining us in eggs, steak, and ground beef and lots of burgers.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, my kids are the same way. They love that stuff. My one daughter is particularly, she always steals the caps off my ribeyes when I cook them up. She don't want that part, Daddy. Okay.
You're a good dad.
Yeah, better one than me.
Yeah, I grudgingly say, okay. So you guys said you offer training services to this not competitive bodybuilders, but people that are just trying to get in shape. What do you're probably not putting them all on carnivore, or maybe you are, I don't know. What are you telling those folks now, given your sort of history and what you believe now?
It's a great question. We come to recognize that we can't overwhelm everybody with what it is that we're doing, but our goal is to gradually get them there or close to it. So the way that we present nutrition for our clients is along a spectrum. And we introduce, hey, primal eating, carnivore, that's this end of the spectrum, and this is what it looks like. At the furthest end of the spectrum, we have flexible nutrition, which is still focused very heavily on the protein and fat side of things. But this is where if people wanted to have rice still, if they wanted their potatoes, if they couldn't give up their vegetables, which I don't know why anybody would have an issue with giving up their vegetables, but anyhow, there are those individuals. We present that end of the spectrum, and then we show them how in the middle you have more animal-based, where it looks more like carnivore, but with some berries mixed in, and maybe some other fruit. And so we present that to them. And what we often try to explain is that, hey, if you're looking for the fastest progress that you could possibly make, then this primal end of the spectrum is the way to go. If you're not ready mentally to jump into that, then find out where along that spectrum you reside. And if that means that you can be 90% primal, but you still need to have one little piece of that flexible plan mixed in every day to keep you on it, then that's fine. We'd rather see you doing that and moving more towards the primal end of the spectrum. And that's the ultimate goal. So we let them self-select based on the rate at which they want to see progress, but also where they feel most comfortable starting.
Yeah, we've talked, a fair bit about, like you said, bodybuilding, and that's all about kind of body composition and maybe sports performance. But did either of you guys notice any kind of just, gee whiz, wow, this is different improvements in your health or quality of life? A lot of people notice, hey, my hair grows fast or some weird stuff. Did you notice anything like that, either of you guys?
For me, I think the biggest thing was reduction of inflammation. I've struggled with GI issues literally my entire life. Had a diagnosis back when I was an educator of narcolepsy. And so I just couldn't manage energy levels. So for me, it's just been steady energy. Mentally, it's that mental well-being where I never feel restricted. And yeah, I think my hair and nails grow pretty great. My skin is very clear. And what about you?
I know for me, my skin is the best that it has ever been.
Yeah.
And she's the one who tells me that. So
his back feels so good. I'm like, wow, it's so smooth.
But I think that just in general, managing energy levels, that to me has been the biggest game changer. My sleep is amazing. And I'm a person who I highly value my sleep. But I think the fact that I could get up very early and function really good, like right from the onset, has been the biggest thing. Again, aside from the physical changes, that really for me has been huge. And then, like we mentioned before, clearing up my gut issues. Yeah. I didn't realize how much those were holding me back until I didn't have them anymore. And just as a self-experiment, when I was probably about 6 or 7 months into carnivore, I'm feeling great. My gut feels awesome. And one day I'm walking through the kitchen and I see our boys left three raspberries on a plate. And I'm thinking, no big deal, just 3 raspberries. I popped them in my mouth and almost immediately, within, I should say, about 30 minutes, I was feeling some of that gut discomfort that I had felt so much longer ago. And it just came to realize that, wow, this is making such a big difference in my digestive health. Yeah. And that's been a big plus.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people say you've enfeebled yourself because now you can't tolerate these things. And you go back and there's actually historical accounts of certain populations, Inuit, for example, and if they were offered like something that would, like fruit and even fruit thing, like they would refuse it. They would like, we just don't want this stuff because maybe they had the same experience perhaps with that. And do you find that, like you mentioned, you said you're not a depressed person, but you had a little sort of period of maybe you didn't feel so good mentally. You guys, and you mentioned brain fog. You find that mental health, generally I see a lot of people that are just chilled out and happy. Is that kind of been your experience as well with this? Do you have a lot of mood lability or is it pretty stable now?
In short, yes. It's stable. Being a mom, being a business owner, being a coach, having multiple businesses that we manage, it's easy to get stressed out. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I never get stressed, but it's the stress resilience of being able to handle situations better and just feeling good in your skin.
Yeah, fair enough. And a lot of people don't have that, unfortunately. It turns into sort of a lot of problems for people when they get a bunch of those people together. They can't handle a little bit of stress and weird things happen. Negatives, because we've talked about the positive. Are there any kind of negatives you can point out? Like I switched to carnivore and I don't know, some people say whatever. I don't know. Any negatives that you've come into so far?
Yeah, I switched to carnivore and now I don't want to eat at restaurants anymore. We look at date night and I'm like, you want to go? No. What are we going to do? Go out and get no sides, no appetizers, and just steak and maybe wings? What about you?
I mean, that really has been one of the probably toughest things, is that it definitely has impeded a little bit on our social life. And I just mean between us, because when we go to weddings or events, we're still fine. Like, listen, we look around, you got cheese, you got some meat, we're good. That's all we need. And we're quite happy with that. I would only say that the thing that I do give thought to every once in a while is potentially the need to add some carbs in for muscle fullness. And I would say that was maybe the only thing that maybe consider having some carbs every now and again. And this goes back again, just to my bodybuilding background, just understanding the role that water plays in muscle fullness. And I know that on carnivore, I'm not holding any glycogen in my muscles, not to the extent that it would allow them to be puffed up, if you will. But I also know that so much of the look comes from the leanness. So I don't view it as a negative at all. I just view it as like an interesting self-experimentation, which I haven't felt the need to really go there yet, but it's something that I may want to try to do just to see and measure the impact. See if I did this every once in a while, would it have a positive impact on my physique or make no difference at all at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I get often people telling me, hey, if you just eat some potatoes and rice, and I'm like, I did those experiments years ago, and for me, it gave me a gut ache, and it didn't really add much to my performance. So, like, I've done that experiment. It didn't really work that well for me, so I'm quite happy just to continue eating a bunch of steaks and pushing along, and I'm quite good with that. As far as, have you gotten much, I assume you guys are on social media or something like that, I would imagine, maybe not. Any sort of negativity, oh my God, you're cruel, you're destroying the planet, you're that sort of stuff that a lot of people try to guilt people about. Have you gotten much of that?
Oh, people are so happy to see us killing innocent animals. And yeah, it's funny. It depends on the platform. Facebook, war market, no problem. People are like, wow, that's fascinating. Instagram, pretty even, maybe a hater here or there. TikTok, Wild West. People were so angry. I had a video that got over 2 million views because people were so angry. It was just a picture of me cutting a piece of steak and just say I've been carnivore for this many days. And they were infuriated by the fact that I was eating meat. So I think it really depends on where you go and the audience that you encounter.
Yeah, I think for the most part, our audience and such, they've watched us go through some of these progressions, and we never present anything until we are 100% absolutely sure that it works. And we've done it for at least 6 to upwards of 12 months before ever considering introducing it to anyone else. So we've earned a lot of trust with our audience, with our clients, because they know that we're not just going to go into it for the sake of it and try to convince them to do the same. I spend a lot of time all day reading research papers. I'm just a closet nerd in that way. I actually like reading the research, seeing what it says, extracting what I can from it, and then trying to educate others around it. So I would say that by and large, the response that we've gotten from people has been largely positive, or it's just been highly curious. Yes. They're coming to us with a lot of questions, wanting to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. They come to Corrie-Beth and they want the emotional side and the explain to me like what this is gonna do for me mentally and physically. And then for me, they're looking for the scientific backing behind it. And so we always come with those two things. And so far, so good. I would say that it's been largely positive.
Yeah, good for you. And I think it's gotten, certainly this whole carnivore thing has grown tremendously since when I started in my stuff 7-8 years ago or so. We're seeing, obviously there's still a lot of criticism around it because people don't like it. People don't like it. They've got their sort of belief, their worldview that we need to turn everybody into a bunch of plant-based bug-eating people, perhaps. I don't know. Sometimes that's maybe it's conspiracy theory, but I think there's a lot of people out there that really want to see that. Do you find that, I guess you said you bought a cow from a local guy and you found that to be, your kids liked it a lot better. Where do you typically source your beef from? Is it grocery store? Is it only organic, grass finished? Or do you find it doesn't matter that much for you guys?
Really been all of the above. And I think initially there's that guilt, right? If I'm not buying grass-fed, grass-finished, organic, it's not going to be good enough. And I think a lot of the research Mike has done has quelled some of that, listen, if we need to go pick up a ribeye from the supermarket, it is what it is. Buying the cow, I think, really opened up taste preference and knowledge that, yeah, it's so simple. It's so much less expensive than buying it anywhere else. And we've enjoyed it. But I would say all of the above.
Yeah, are you guys consuming much in the way of dairy products? Is that, because I heard a lot of fish, salmon, beef, eggs, any dairy products make it in there?
And half in the morning and then some cheese, but definitely not an overconsumption of cheese.
Yeah, we're not big yogurt eaters or cottage cheese. Maybe early on we were having some of that, and it's just been an interesting progression that what I needed to do in the beginning to start getting into carnivore is just very different than what it looks like now. And over time, I've found myself just simplifying it more and more. My preference, if I could just have ribeye for every single meal now until forever, like I would be totally good with that. I don't need anything else. For me, the value in that is its simplicity, but also I just truly enjoy it. So I think that now, yeah, there's probably less dairy than ever, just a little bit of creamer in the coffee for the most part, and some cheese every now and again, especially if we're out and about at an event and it's on the charcuterie board, we'll go that route.
Yeah, they need to make an all ribeye cow. I think if they can invent that, that would be quite an achievement there for sure. I certainly am a big fan. In fact, I've got 2 of them cooking up right now that I'll have here in about, 45 minutes or so. Have you guys, what was I going to say here with this? Do you guys find that this has been you mentioned libido, and I know that's because you guys probably familiar, you guys can talk about that between each others, but when you go on a traditional bodybuilding cut, when it's low fat, it's low energy basically, it's low fat, not a lot of carbohydrates, mostly protein, I think, pretty much. You get down to that point where you're just the last thing. Have you found that your hormones at the same level of leanness that you are better with fat as opposed to carbs? I guess. Personally,
for me, I feel like it's improved on carnivore. For me personally, I notice more of a fullness to my muscles. I walk around and I constantly have friends being like, gosh, your arms, you're so cut, you're this, you're that. Whereas when I competed in bodybuilding and went on this very high carb, low fat diet, everyone I worked with was like, are you sick? Are you okay? Is anything wrong with you? And maybe for them, it was watching that dramatic loss of 30 pounds over 9 months. But I literally just got my hormones checked, literally just went and did labs, and everything for me as a 37-year-old woman is really healthy.
And I'll just say for myself that at this particular level of leanness, libido and hormonally, like everything is at a peak.
It's the best.
100%.
Let's just be honest. Yeah.
100%. What used to happen quite frequently during the bodybuilding days was initially as we started to lose body fat, and probably mainly because we were cutting out a lot of the ultra processed foods. And even though it wasn't what we would consider to be an ideal diet, it was still more whole food than anything else. Probably about halfway through, we would feel pretty good and libido would be really high. But as we would get into those last several months, that's when things would really start to take that downturn. And so I could say that when I would be at my current weight in this current condition, my libido was not as high as it is today.
Yeah, fair enough. That seems to make sense for sure. Obviously, to compete in bodybuilding, you have to have a certain amount of discipline. You just have to. There's no way around that. Do you find that has been something that you still exhibit? Because you said it's just like eat till I'm hungry or eat till I'm full type of thing. Has that been kind of has it made you lazy, I guess, in a way? I don't know.
Did you just call us lazy? I'm going to say, hold on. Can you repeat that question one more time? Well,
just your perception. Before it's a struggle. You're always focused. And now because you maybe don't have to do that. You maybe relax more. I don't know. Maybe lazy wasn't the best word, but maybe more relaxed and less obsessive about it.
No, I think that it's a great question. And I think for me personally, it's been such a journey of learning what makes me feel good versus how things taste. And that's always what we coach on. It's not how is this going to taste? It's how is this going to make me feel? And again, I've never felt better, more alive, more energized. Yes, I will say right before my monthly cycle, I do have that dip in energy. That's always been normal for me, but I come right back up after it. And no, I think that the discipline is carried through just because in my body, my inflammation, my gut, everything feels so good. It's not worth it.
And I would just say that because I totally get the question, when you are doing bodybuilding or some endeavor that does require a lot of discipline, now that's no longer there. What happens? And for a lot of people, this is where I think the psychological side comes in. Without that there, they can quite easily fall into becoming lazy and not really motivated to do anything. I believe that because we have so many other things going on, because we have our business and we have our boys and we have things outside of bodybuilding that give us juice that we really enjoy doing, we get to direct some of that discipline and energy towards those things. Whereas one of the things that I used to notice is when it came to competition prep, you're either all in or all out, as you would imagine. But what winds up happening is all the other things go completely on the back burner. So during those times, physically look my best, most presentable to clients, potential clients, and what have you. But at the same time, not as much focus and discipline on the business. And then you come out of that and it's okay, now I can relax with my nutrition and direct my energy here. So to me, there's just been such freedom with eating this way because it's one thing that we don't have to be disciplined. There's still a discipline around it, if you ask me, but it's not one of these disciplines where we have to exact our willpower. It's just the discipline of doing it every day and being consistent with it, which to me is far easier than what we used to do. And I like just being able to exact my discipline in some of these other areas.
Yeah, it's almost an hour. We're getting out of time. I guess I'll take a moment. So you said, where are you guys located on social media? If somebody wanted to contact you for coaching services or whatever you're offering, how do they do that?
They can search Pure Physique. So it's pure, like the strongest version of physique, like your body, or Mike Lepowski or Corrie-Beth Lepowski. There's not too many people with that last name, so we should probably pop up.
Yeah, it's spelled out. It's Lipowski. Lepowski. Okay. And so that's obviously clearly Italian or something. I'm just kidding. No.
Half Italian, half Polish.
Oh, Polish. Yeah. I lived, when I grew up as a kid, I lived around Chicago. I think there's more people from Polish people in Chicago than there is in Warsaw or something like that. It's some kind of crazy number or something like that. I wish you guys the best. Do you have any plans what are your plans? Do you have any upcoming events? I know I halfly joke and challenge you guys to do another bodybuilding show, but I'm kidding. Obviously you can do that if you want to, but do you have any things coming up that you're looking forward to or planning?
Our online program right now, we have a couple of 6-week challenges coming up. And so that's through our gyms and our online. So anyone, anywhere, anytime can access that through Pure Physique. And then our franchise is growing. So we'll be opening some more locations on the East Coast. And we're just so excited to be able to bring time efficient exercise to people everywhere.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. Thank you guys for sharing this and showing that you can obviously compete at a high level athletically or get a good body with a carnivore diet, which I already know, but it's good to see more people reinforcing that idea. So anyway, thank you guys very much. For the rest of the folks, we have another one of these this afternoon. I think at 1 o'clock, we're doing another one. So if anyone wants to attend that, we'll be happy to see you guys there too. All right, guys, any last second things you want to put in there, or do we get everything?
And I think we got everything in. We're just very grateful to you, grateful to this community. It's just awesome having such supportive people and just seeing how people are literally changing their lives every single day by going down this route of carnivore, primal eating. I think it's amazing. And we have you to thank for a lot of it. So eternally grateful.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And yeah, I like you guys, I see so many people getting healthier and happier, and that's what it's about. Anyway, see everybody later. See you guys. Take care. Good luck to you. Bye-bye, guys.